Hey everybody, welcome to SwingBadder. I'm your host, Brendan. I'm joined by my favorite, Todd. How you doing?
Man, really excited about that fact that we got Rust and Crosby on the board here for the little hockey game going on as we're shooting this. I will be back in my baseball wear soon, don't you worry. But I gotta pay a lot of reverence right now to what the Diamondbacks are doing as of this recording. They are ruining every pick I have ever made in the playoffs.
That is a fair point. I will say I met a janitor today. I meet lots of people because I talk to everybody. He said if the Diamondbacks sweep the Dodgers, he will make a cool $750 because he bet on the Diamondbacks to sweep the Dodgers. And I looked at him and I said, "You're a very smart man. You shouldn't be doing this work."
What did he bet, $1?
Yeah, how much did he bet? Was that $10?
He bet 10, 15, $50. I don't know. Not much. For those that had to sweep, I mean, God bless you. Dad, we're also joined by you. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm so good. I hate to make this all about the Diamondbacks, but, I heard on the radio today, they read Corbin Carroll's statistics. He's played in 4 playoff games in his career. And his statistics in these 4 games, I don't remember any of them. In terms of getting on base and home runs and stolen bases. There's only one player that matched what he's done in his first 4 games in the history of baseball, and that was Lou Gehrig. I mean, he's put up just incredible numbers. I'm glad America's getting to see what a treat he is, and I'm glad he's doing well so far. He's quite a player.
I would say that the Brewers were not much of a match for him. However, to do this against the Dodgers is quite fascinating. He's a fantastic player, and for that, I hope he doesn't retire after hearing these stats so he can match him. I hope he plays much longer. He is fantastic.
He's got 10 more years of a guaranteed contract that he's got to play.
Locked him in. And we're going to get into the lock-in, or should I say the baseball teams that try, but just can't make the change happen. I'm going to wind back the clock a little bit. We can play a little music for those that are with us. This episode, we're going to get into who hasn't made the playoffs in so long and why. And we're going to start with the lovely Angels. They used to be the Anaheim Angels, and now they're the Los Angeles Angels. So hold on to your hats, folks. We're talking about how the Angels can't get it right. So if I wind back the clock, back in 2014, if you believe it or not, that is the longest streak a baseball team has had of not making the playoffs. And there's 2 teams that made the playoffs in 2014. The number one seed was the Anaheim Angels, and the number 3 seed was the Detroit Tigers. Both of those teams, it is the last time they sniffed the playoffs since 2014. Before getting into the Tigers, though, on their episode, we're going to focus on the Angels. The Angels that year were the number 1 seed. They had the best record. They had just signed Albert Pujols. They have Mike Trout. And they proceed to lose in a sweeping fashion to the powerhouse that is the Kansas City Royals. Now, that is a year, if some people recall, we only had 5 teams make the playoffs, and the wild card teams played each other to face off against the 1 seed. So to face the 1 seed, you had to play a game early on. Both the Giants and the Royals won the wild card matchup, taking them all the way to the World Series because that's what happened. They beat everybody and went to the World Series. So the worst 2 teams in baseball ended up facing off for the World Series in a great 7-game series that the Giants ended up winning. But let's talk and focus on the Angels. The Angels had so much hope and so many things happening for that team. They had Albert Pujols, they had Mike Trout, they had just had the best record in baseball, and they had one of the best tandems, if you will, of GM and manager, if some will recall. Mike Scioscia was the manager. He had won the World Series in 2002. And then you had a GM who did not get along with him, not one bit. And in, I believe, 2014 was the last year for that general manager. And in walked the general manager that I love. He just finished with Todd's favorite team, believe it or not. And he left in great fashion because there's still an investigation on this general manager. Todd, would you like to inform our listeners, the general manager that I love so much?
So Buck Showalter sent an anonymous letter to Major League Baseball that Billy Eppler was manipulating the injured list. And, well, no, we don't know that it was Buck Showalter, but
But
I have this secret fantasy world where Buck Showalter and Billy Eppler hated each other.
Yes.
And Billy Eppler kept wanting Buck Showalter to play Daniel Fatty Vogelbach all the time. And so tell Mom I said hi, Dad.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. What's for dinner?
I'm ordering. It's like the airplanes. You get to order your dinner.
What are you getting?
Chipotle.
Couscous?
Couscous. What am I getting? Couscous. Couscous. That's wonderful. Is there anything in it?
Only Dad can make that sound good. That sounds wonderful. I love it.
Tell Mom we said hi.
They all said hi, and they love you deeply, and they want some couscous.
So much couscous. Who's our GM, Todd? Who's our guy?
Billy. I'm a loser, Eppler.
We have to have a better nickname than that. I was not acceptable. Dad, do you have a nickname for Billy Eppler?
A stinking genius.
A stinking genius. Well, I have inept Eppler as my nickname for Mr. Billy.
Eppler.
And Eppler is even better. Thank you, Todd. So
I like that.
Mr. Billy Eppler took over this team in 2015, and he had some fantastic signings. But the best part about this is this team could not sniff the playoffs from 2015 to 2023. And this year they went all in trying to make the playoffs with Ohtani because Ohtani was having a great year till he got injured. This team has so much talent that they have signed. Just listen to the DL list of this team for this year to end the season. You had Trout, Mr. Mike Trout, Ohtani. You had Rendon, who hasn't played since he signed a contract with them. That alone is $100 million. But wait, let's sprinkle in their big signing in the offseason, Mr. Anderson as a pitcher. He was also sitting on the designated disabled list. So these four individuals make up about $118 million not playing to end the Angels' year. Yes, $118 million. What would that buy you? The Rays and the Orioles, and you have some loose change to go to a movie or buy a movie theater or 5 or make a movie. So
did Mr. Eppler sign Justin and B.J. Upton?
That you are correct. He did do that. He has many, many signings. I would love some comments of your favorite Angels signing. I have some lovely uncles and cousins who are Angels followers. When they signed Albert Pujols, they said, now we got it. Now we're going to make the playoffs all the time because he did that with the Cardinals and they made it 1 year. The best part about that 1 year in that sweep with the Royals, Mike Trout batted, I believe, 083 and Albert Pujols batted like maybe 105. Neither of them, but I got maybe one hit, no home runs, nothing really to count home for. And the Royals swept them. And that was it. That was the last. But the Angels were super excited. We finished first. We're going to make it again. And we have had 8 years of drought. So the big question at SwingBadder that we like to dive in is how hard is it for a franchise that seems to be trying, because they are trying. They are spending money. They are trying to put together talent, and they are trying to win. To win in a division, if you look at it, the Rangers spent money and they are winning. The Seattle Mariners have built a nice team and they are winning. And the Houston Astros continue to be winning. So the Angels have yet to sniff those teams. The Seattle Mariners jumped them over the past years, and they seem to never get into the role of a good team. Either the farm system is bad, they don't have the right pitchers, they don't have the right relievers. It just seems they don't have the right navigating space to put a good team together. So that begs the question, when you have the money, you have the resources, you have the ability to sign people, how difficult is it really to take a franchise from no playoffs in a drought of 8 years to playoffs in a season? Now, mind you, we get 6 teams in the playoffs now. So it really, if you look at the American League, I believe you had to have close to 90 wins this year. But in the National League, you just had to be a little bit over 500. So you're going to have years where you don't need to be great just to make the playoffs. And the Angels can't even be a little bit good to make the playoffs. So I'm going to toss this over first to Dad. You've been around baseball quite a long time. When you see a team that's trying as hard, and I think they're trying, I think the Angels truly are trying to make the playoffs. I think the owner cares. I think the GM cares. I think the manager cares, although they just fire the manager because they're probably going to hire Buck Showalter. What are the key pieces in this chessboard that would make a team competitive?
I don't know if they're as incompetent as they appear or if they're cursed from the devil. You remember when they signed Josh Hamilton, this all-star from the Rangers who carried the Rangers into the World Series, was one strike away from winning the World Series with Josh Hamilton, would have easily won the MVP. He was everything. And they outbid the Rangers and brought him to California. And he was magnificent player. And the guy who showed up to play for California wasn't Josh Hamilton. Maybe it was Hamilton from Broadway, but he couldn't do anything. From day one, he just didn't do anything. In fact, his career was over. Right. When he signed with the Angels, he never played well again the rest of his career.
Cursed from the devil. That's an interesting line. Todd, what do you think about these Angels and how you build a chessboard of a team to get them just to make the play? We're not even talking about win the division. Just make the playoffs.
The Angels' biggest issue is the same issue that Eppler brought over to the Mets, and it's an over-reliance on signing free agents and making trades and relying on an owner with a giant checkbook and not developing your younger players. One of the biggest reasons why, and you look at this, is why Cohen decided to bring Stearns into the Mets. And I'm going to tie this into the Mets because I can. Because Eppler failed to develop a pitching lab, so to speak, that Stearns had developed with the Brewers that had led to the Brewers having such a strong pitching staff. Eppler, for all of his shenanigans saying that he was this big stat guy and he was this big analytics guy, for some reason would bring in guys that there was a feel to them as players that if he paid more attention to that, he would have been better off kind of mitigating some of the spending spree that the Angels and the Mets had gone off on. And, I'm talking about, when he brought specifically Anthony Rendon is probably the biggest one as far as just really kind of sabotaging the Angels there. I mean, like you're loading up $250 million, $245 million of contract on this guy. And it's just become absolutely obvious to anybody who's paying attention to the game that the guy just doesn't want to play baseball anymore. Like he is mentally completely checked out. He's got a bunch of Fugazi injuries. It just makes no sense. Now, granted, he was the top free agent at the time, but this was also the team that flirted with Carlos Correa and almost signed Carlos Correa, which you're going to look at the playoffs now and say, well, we should have signed him, that type of thing. But this was after the Giants had rejected him medically. There was no reason for the Mets to go all in on Carlos Correa and then move him to third base or have him at second base or something like that. And so there's just like a lack of development. There's a lack of progression with the players that they bring in. The Mets this year had a lot of really highly touted young talent that it seemed like could not make the transition from AAA to the major leagues. Alvarez came out really strong and then stalled. He was probably the biggest success story the Mets had. But then you had, Beatty stalled, Vientos stalled, and then they just never, it was just this continuous thing over and over. And then when you look at the Angels lineup, what do you see? You see a bunch of guys that were imported and traded for. I'm looking just right now on the contract terms for the Los Angeles Angels. Okay, so Mike Trout was drafted. All right, so he was there. But if you're a player developer, and you can talk to Mason about this on your Campus to Contracts podcast, what are you really doing to improve Mike Trout other than saying just get out of the way and let the guy do his bench press or whatever it is he's got to do in order to be a good player, right? It's the guys that you have to develop, further and further. Rendon, free agent. Grichuk, 5 years, $52 million. They traded for him. Tyler Anderson, free agent. They got Ohtani, but he was already developed on the international stage. So I'm looking at the Ohtani deal with Eppler, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that's probably a no-brainer. And the owner probably said, do you sign this guy no matter what? Oh, great. I get a blank check. How difficult is that to go and make, to make that signing? It's probably not that, I want to go back to one of your points that I think is really critical when you're talking about the chessboard of a team, the development of the younger talent.
everyone that I talk to in the baseball American League division, like the American League West, the National League West, if you look at the Diamondbacks division, the Dodgers are really, really great at developing their talent. They're also great at drafting talent, and they're also great at getting their talent better. These minor league systems are all very different. The thing that is shocking to me is that after all of these moves in baseball, because you can go get anybody from anywhere, it is not hard to copy any kind of movement. But for the Angels to have spent all this money because they see, in my opinion, this shiny object to add to their team when they're still eons away from making the playoffs. Like, they're not one or two pieces away from making the playoffs next year. They have three very competitive teams in their division, and they have a lot of missing pieces. So even if they were to go out and sign a piece or two, it's who are you bringing up to surround the talent as it gets older? And I've never read or heard about how the Angels are stacking their farm system up or bringing up younger talent. And now you have baseball, which is a little bit faster of a game. But as I look at the chessboard, I think one of the areas that's missing is the reliance on the farm system to develop your talent. That means drafting really well, developing that talent. Look at the Orioles, look at the Rays. They do a good job of that. The Orioles did an exceptional job of that. Spend your money on the younger talent as he gets better and comes up to the majors. You can be very pleasantly surprised. Trying to fill in a all-star signing, which is what they do. They get an all-star and sign them, has not been the ticket for them to make the playoffs. You're an 8-year drought, and I currently, looking at this team, I would argue that there's still 2 years, possibly 3, before they sniff the playoffs.
What do they have at pitching?
It's just not there.
What do they have at pitching? Like, what are they developing? They've obviously said that they've already made it very clear they're not in the Shohei Ohtani business. Which makes no sense to me. And they're actually willing to listen to trades for Mike Trout. So what are you in the business of? Holding Anthony Rendon?
They have to get rid of the high-end guys from minor leaguers and arms in the minor leagues and just start stacking and developing and end the draft. So the way you do that is try to get rid of those guys. And maybe the top guys like Rendon and Trout, they cost a lot of money. But I'll bet you they got a whole bunch of journeyman guys there who are 30, 29, 31. They're never going to the World Series with those guys. Trade them, get 3 younger guys, and start to build. And they're just going to do what the Orioles did. Just go south for a couple years and build.
We just went through this with the Mets. Yeah, you can sit there and say, like, I've rebuilt my minor league system, but the reality is, like, what did the Mets pick up? They picked up really great minor league prospects, but how many of those minor league prospects make the major leagues? And I'll go back to this. Jacob deGrom was never in the MLB top 100 prospects. It never was. So how accurate is that stuff really? Right? Well, and it's a lot easier to give up these guys if you're willing to pay for them to walk away. And I don't know that the Angels brass is willing to do that right now.
I would argue there's 2 things that I would argue about building a team for the playoffs. Number 1 is you need 2 really good starters. Just off the bat, you got to have 2 thoroughbreds in the front of your lineup, and the Angels don't have that. The other part that's extremely difficult that teams struggle with this is building a good bullpen to get to the 9th inning. That's a hard struggle. If you're able to build a good bullpen, that means know where your arms are supposed to go. Is this a starter? Is this a reliever? That's your pitching staff. As far as hitting is concerned, to me, find the talent. Trade with other folks. The Dodgers have, from what I've read, 2 catchers in the minor league systems that have nowhere to go. They have to change positions because Will Smith is so amazing for the Dodgers, and he's in his 20s. So you have guys that you can go grab that would be great additions to your team, to Dad's point, to help build things up by giving away the talent you have. If they stay on their current position, they don't make any trades, and they continue to falter like they are, the Seattle Mariners, in my position, have been built very well as an organization. They're going to be in the top 3. The Rangers have spent money on big bats and big arms, as well as they have a couple young talented guys that are part of that lineup. So I don't think the Rangers are going anywhere. Don't even get me started on Houston because I can't see them going anywhere for quite a while. You have 3 competitive teams in your division. If the Angels were in the Central Division, I would say you have some hope. So if you stick around to the Tigers episode, I would say they have some hope. The Angels, to me, are lost. They keep trying to say we're competitive because, look, we spend money. And they never quite put those chess pieces together. And it's easy from my view, because I'm not in it, to say this is what you need to do. But when I look at a team and I say, how do you build it? You have to commit to one process. I feel they're herky-jerky in how they're trying to build. They want to go one way, but they also want to go another way. That never leads to success. They got to have a firm answer of how they want to get there. And the question for our, Moreno, the owner of the Angels, who bought them from Disney after they won the World Series, at what point do you just sell and say, this has been a good thing, but maybe I'm done? Maybe somebody else is going to own this thing.
I have a couple of thoughts. I think, first of all, I've heard Moreno is interested in selling, number one. Number two, if it's just on baseball alone, the only way to clean this up, they're not going to compete, is to just start over. Start getting rid of guys in payroll and getting the draft and getting some kids who can throw 100 miles an hour and put them in the minors and see what flows out. But requires, and I don't think that Angels have this, it doesn't seem like they do, somebody who can recognize talent. Somebody who not only recognizes talent, but the specific talent you're looking for. Are you looking to build a team with power, with speed, with pitching, with defense? How do you want to build the team? Or you just want to get a guy who does well, but you got 3 other guys who do the same thing. I don't know if they've got that. And the other thing which you haven't mentioned, and I don't know this because I don't live there, they're in the Los Angeles market with the Dodgers. They will never, ever be as popular as the Dodgers. I don't care what they do. And I wonder if they're not under pressure every year to sign a big name like Rendon or Josh Hamilton or Justin Upton,
Tyler Anderson,
or Luis Pujols, just to sell some tickets. They know it's not going to work, but they're going to get the fans, hey, I got to go see this guy. So, can't develop a winner doing that. So I don't know. I don't think they know what they're doing. They're like a ship with no captain and no rudder. Just, let's just do this today. They don't seem to have any kind of plan.
So as of right now, I just picked up some stats from Spot Track on the contracts here. And there's a bunch of guys that are going to our arbitration. They have one contract locked up for next year as a starting pitcher.
Tyler Anderson.
That's it. It's the only starting pitcher they have locked up. The rest of them are going to arbitration. They got Patrick Sandoval, Jamie Barria, Griffin Canny, Jose Suarez. Like, those are all going to arbitration. They're not free agents for another couple of years.
They're going to keep them. They're just whether they win the arbitration or not.
But they have those guys for pennies on the dollar. They have, for their relief pitchers, right? For their relief pitchers, they have, for next year, about $14 million locked up. And it's Carlos Estevez for $13.5 million. So the rest of them are guys in 1-year league minimum contracts, right? For your relief pitcher. I don't know what they're doing on the pitching side. In the meantime, you have the Mariners have $59 million dedicated to pitchers next year, starting pitchers. They have $2.1 million dedicated to relief pitchers next year. Houston is spending $89 million. They already have locked up on pitchers for next year.
Yeah, it's
between starting pitchers and relief pitchers. And
you didn't even pull up the Rangers, which have a ton too.
Oh, yeah, the Rangers, yeah. But I mean, like, that's...
So if you go back a little bit to Dad's earliest comment about this team being somewhat cursed, if you remember the terrible passing of the pitcher in the overdose scandal that followed for the Angels, it was extremely tragic. I don't like even mentioning the poor. I mean, he was a young man. His family was. It was just terrible. They ended up arresting one of the team, I believe, managers. I may not have this right, but they had teammates. This is what their manager was doing, who worked for the Angels. So if you want to talk about a mess, you had a hired staffer providing this kind of thing to a player. So if you go back to what's the focus, what is you doing, what's going on, I would argue that the Angels have two problems. One is, to Dad's point, they look across the street, they see the Dodgers, and they're trying to compete with a team that has not built the same way. The second thing that they have a problem with is living in that environment, in that area, is extremely expensive. Is that a problem with trying to get talent to support your baseball team? Because the cost of living is so high that you're just not hiring the right talent. You can back up and say the owner can afford it. He certainly can. I mean, I want to see what happens with Oakland when the A's go to Las Vegas, if that changes things for them and the owner spends more money. But for me, the Angels have a lot of things going against them. They've had some scandals. They've had terrible injuries.
I don't think cost of living has anything to do with it. If that was the case, the Dodgers wouldn't be able to sign people. The Padres wouldn't be able to sign people. The Giants wouldn't be able to sign people. Like that doesn't click for me. The other stuff maybe.
I'm talking about the staff. Getting enough staff. And I don't know the numbers of staff.
I may be repeating myself, but it just seems what's lacking in this organization is how to recognize talent to build a team. I mean, they recognize, oh, he's a good guy. He's a free agent. We can throw $100 million at him and sign him, Rendon or whoever, but that's not building a team. You do that if that's your one missing piece, right? You're bringing in the missing piece. They are not in that position. They are not one piece away. With the pitchers they're going to have next year, wow. They're going to have a hard time beating the A's.
Yeah.
That's a very sad.
This is going to be a long road. It's going to be a long road. Get your shovels out and get digging.
So for the Angels fan to be hopeful, I think the biggest thing that I would say to any baseball team, don't put money on pawns. Put money on the queen or the king. And don't think a person is a queen or king when they really are pawned. And you're playing the game of chess. It feels to me the Angels continue to pick up pawns, shine them up and say, this is my queen. Todd, you mentioned who is their one starter they signed from the Dodgers who had the best year ever, who we all said was not that great of a signing?
Mr. Anderson.
And what happened? He didn't perform, and he's on the disabled list. So again,
Brendan, you said something interesting, Brendan. Oakland's going to Las Vegas. How come everybody thinks that somehow this horrible, horrible team is going to all of a sudden be pretty good? Because they're Oakland. And for years, they were able to get no names and get competitive teams. So you know someone in that organization can figure out talent if they want to. They didn't want to do that this year. So if you got those kind of people, you can be competitive. It just seems like a hole in the Angels organization. There are so many guys they paid that just couldn't perform at all and couldn't help the team.
So I'm going to label the Angels the cigar club because I feel like the owner is signing and the GM is signing players he wants to have cigars and tell stories with. They had more story time with Albert Pujols than they did with playoff time with Albert Pujols. So when you look at the talent that they're bringing on, these are great stories. Rendon has some great stories. At the end of the day, the structure of the organization is not set up to succeed. We don't foresee them having a structure to succeed. I put them at solidly fourth for next year, and I look at them for the next 2 to 3 years and say, there's no chance for playoffs. This record of not going to the playoffs is easily going to surpass 10 years.
This is what happens when Billy Eppler runs your organization. For that long?
Do you recall how many years he was the GM for the Angels?
6.
It's way longer than it should have been.
Yeah, I mean the Mets did the best thing they could in getting rid of the guy.
They should have never signed him.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That was my one critique of the Mets in the offseason was they signed a terrible GM with a guy with a big pocketbook.
I'm starting to think you had a rookie owner that just decided he was going to just put some guys in who were baseball guys that had a good reputation for one reason or another as placeholders, and then he cut bait real quick.
Before we close it out, there's a song that I'm reminded of by Cake. I like a girl with a short skirt and a long jacket. That is Billy Eppler. He wants an owner with a long jacket, meaning lots of money. And he wants a team that looks really good because he went to the Angels, to the Mets. So he likes the looks and he likes the money. But man, don't take that lady out, boys. She's only trouble.
Yep.
I have something positive to tell the Angel fans.
Here it is. Positivity Peter for you. Coming with some positivity feedback.
It's a new segment, Positivity Pete.
Here we go with Positivity
Go
Pete.
on YouTube and watch 2002 when they won the World Series with the Rally Monkey. Those were the good old days.
It was.
And and the best part about that is the Walt Disney franchise company. Walt Disney Company owned them for that World Series. And ever since then, it hasn't gone well. Well, that's the...
For either.
Yeah, for any of them, or the Rally Monkey for that matter. Well, the interesting thing is if you also look at their team's record leading up to that, they were in the playoffs consistently up into this 2014. And then they also got rid of Mike Scioscia, who I thought was a really good manager. He made the playoffs all the time. And then if you look at their record after that, it's just been abysmal. And the worst part about this is when you had the COVID shortened season, that was at all arms on deck. Anybody can make it. And they were terrible. They were just terrible. So I think they're easily going past 10 years. I think they have no focus. Go ahead and comment if you remember 2002 with love in your eyes for the Angels. And if you're an Angels fan, which again, come out to spring training, you can see what young talent they're bringing up. I just don't see them being competitive in that division. So
listen, you gotta love being a fan, even when it's painful.
That's why we're here. That's why Badder Sports is here, and that's why SwingBadder is here. Thank you all for joining us. I am so sorry, Angels, but I think your streak continues next year, and you continue to be the longest team in the playoffs, tied with the Tigers, which you can look forward to that episode. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. That's Todd. That's my dad. I hope you all have a great night, and appreciate you listening and tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like this episode.
Bye-bye.